guys, I want to welcome everyone to the Florida Agritourism Association's more or less monthly webinar, educational webinar program. And today we have a very special guest, Jordan Utsman Wright, which Sarah is going to introduce today. Sarah also has some housekeeping tasks so that everyone can participate to ask Jordan questions. I do want to do a quick promo before we get going to let everyone know that we have our annual conference coming up July 28th through 30th in Kissimmee. It's our second conference. It's going to be even better than last year's. We initially met Jordan at this conference, so we're really excited that we noticed her talent and she's going to be presenting to us today. All right, with that, I pass it to Sarah.
Okay, hi, I'm Sarah. And just for housekeeping, and I know Jordan's going to type this as well, but we use the chat box. That way we don't interrupt her. If it's topical and it's something quick she can answer, we may, but otherwise we'll probably just go over the questions at the end of the webinar. Okay. And I'm happy to introduce Jordan. She is of Santa's Christmas Tree Forest and is a third-generation farmer. She grew up working on her family's Christmas tree farm and has been involved in all aspects of agritourism, from retail to animal care to planting and everything in between. She graduated with a bachelor's degree from the University of Florida before embarking on a career in the food service industry, where she found her passion for training and onboarding. She returned to the farm in 2016 full-time. Since then, she has grown the farm's workforce and increased retention among staff to 75% from season to season. That's great. Yeah. She loves working with the farm's majority teenage staff. That's also great. And inspiring a love of agriculture and agritourism that will hopefully last through the years. So, Jordan, I hand it off to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm just going to pull up share my screen so I can have my presentation going. And I will jump right on into it. So yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you guys for coming out today. I'm excited to get started. Like Sarah said, I would prefer if we keep all questions to the end or we keep it in the chat box. If you do have anything that comes up as we go along, that way we can kind of keep track of questions as they come through. We make sure nothing's going to get missed. I do also, as you can see, have both emails will go to the same place, both of my email addresses. Should you have any questions or you want a copy of any of the materials we go over today, feel free to reach out. These are all, I'm more than willing to share everything that we have. If you have any questions, again, I'm more than willing to get that copy out to you. So again, I'm not really going to introduce myself again because it's basically everything that Sarah already said. But as she said, my name is Jordan Utsman Wright, third-generation farmer. My grandfather started Santa's Christmas Tree Forest in 1989, so it is a year older than I am. We started, as so many of you have, with just our one crop, which are Christmas trees, and without any kind of additional offerings, just the Christmas trees, just to choose and cut. So now we have evolved to have 17 acres of Christmas trees, choose and cut, as well as our additional activities. We are open primarily from late September into December, although we are opening up this year for springtime events as well. And during that time, we run a fall festival where we have a pumpkin patch through October and then transition into our tree season through December. Again, like many of y'all out there, we have numerous other attractions like a zip line, bounce pillow, hay rides, horse rides, petting zoo, and then also some food areas and a bar. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of diverse hiring to do in a very, very short period of time. We only have around eight full-time workers, and that includes myself, our other general manager, Morgan, and my parents, who are like the owner operators. We will hire during our short period of time anywhere between 50 to 75 new workers every single season. And then last year at our peak, when we have our most workers, we have about 140 on staff. Probably about on our busiest weekends, we will have about 80 of them working at all times. The majority of our staff, as Sarah mentioned, is under 18. So our hiring and onboarding necessarily kind of keeps that age group in mind, although we have found that this process is beneficial for all ages. And then over the last 8 years, we've kind of been developing this onboarding and hiring program that works super well for us. We're going to be going over basically everything that we do from first contact and through training. So hopefully it'll give you some actionable ideas that you can take moving forward and you can maybe use, hopefully going forward. So first thing we're going to be going over is hiring. Sorry, there we go. So our hiring process will start in July for our pumpkin season. Myself, along with our core management team, so that's my parents and Morgan as well, we'll sit down and we make a hiring calendar probably in around May, June. We don't have an exact time. And our timeline is pretty basic. This is what it will look like. We don't have to get into too much detail with this, but we basically will sit down and we'll kind of count backwards as to when we need to have people on and get that calendar sorted out. So as you can see, we have our interview dates right here. We try to do them after school. Again, we do have primarily a teenage staff, so after school is something we keep in mind. And we try to keep it going a little bit later, so that way if we do have adults that have a full-time job, we can also bring them in as well. And then we also have a couple of, as you can see, weekend ones as well. We start our interviews in July. This is for our Christmas tree season, so it's not going to show that, but we do start our interviews in July with bi-weekly orientations. That is the goal. We do them bi-weekly, so hopefully we can get enough people in there to make it kind of worth everyone's time. We are upfront about the job start times, hours, etc. Like we do try to be very, very, very much upfront with everybody about what the expectation is. After our calendar is confirmed, we make our application live, and then we use Google Forms for our application. So we're going to go through that. I have found that using Google Forms is the easiest way to keep track of applications and to kind of go in and modify it very easily. We don't use like a plugin on our website. We do link it on our website, but we don't like have the actual application on our website. Again, I find it easier because I can go in and modify things very quickly, which is super handy, especially as we move through to our Christmas tree season and we start kind of having some of the positions full up, or if we have like some, let's say, availability time slots that we really need, or more positions that we really need more than others, I can go in and change it very, very quickly. Let's take a look at the application. So as you can see, we started with a little blurb at the top. And we do, again, try to be very upfront about what our expectations are. Because we do hire down to 14, we do make it very clear when you have to be 14 by, because that is, federal labor laws. We can't hire under that unless they're family. Most employee communication will be through email due to a large number of applicants. This is super important. This is actually something I've just added in the past year or so. Make sure you let them know how you will be contacting them, and to let them know that it might be some time. Especially with teenagers, they tend to be very, very excited about like applying the jobs and maybe getting a job and making money. And so sometimes they will put an application in, and then like an hour or so later, they'll follow up and be like, hey, I haven't gotten an interview yet. I try to, again, be very upfront about what the expectations are, how we'll be communicating, etc. We only require 15 hours of availability. We try to, again, be very upfront. 15 hours of availability, with most of it being on the weekend, kind of works out. This is a part-time seasonal job, and we do like to keep that in mind. We are not, and probably should not be, folks' main priority. And while it is always nice to have an employee that really wants to work a ton, I equally love our employees that just reliably communicate their availability and always show up ready to work, even if they are only working, let's say, 2 shifts a week on those weekends, or only up to those 15 hours a week. I already said this, but we do hire down to 14. I know that lots of businesses do not do that. And 14 can seem really young because it is very young. But we have found that over the years that some of our hires that start with us at 14 have been fantastic, loyal employees that we're actually able to grow with and keep them with us much longer than some of our adults even. They're the ones that want to stay with us. They're the ones that really want to grow with the farm. And they're the ones who then can kind of move into management positions and sometimes even come back and stay with us even longer. I also like to give an approximate timeline of the training and orientations. I don't think this is on here, but I do at times like to say, you know, training will be during X period of time, orientation will be X during a time. Again, more information is always better. I have found in these situations, I like to almost overshare the information and what the process is going to be. It cuts down on unnecessary emails and calls to the farm, and it kind of frees up my time as well. So I'm going to go through the basic information we ask for very quickly because it's, you know, it's going to be different for every single farm. So you can see first name, last name, date of birth, pronouns, phone number, and then address as well. We do ask everybody whether they are attending school at some level and what their school situation is. The reason for this is many students now have very flexible schooling options and therefore flexible times when they are available. We have employees in high school that are in high school at night, that are in partial days, that do FLVS, that do homeschool. There's a million different ways to go to high school now. So having that upfront kind of can help me start thinking, are they going to be a good fit? Do we need more weekday workers? Do we need field trip workers? And kind of start already thinking, where can I place that person? So then, of course, we have our provide the name of the school. Are you authorized to work in the United States? Are you a citizen? All that fun stuff. The next section is something a little different that we do that I haven't seen other applications necessarily do as much. And that is we actually write out a little blurb about every single job description that we have on the farm. Most people that you're going to find, especially coming in the agritourism side of this, are not going to have experience in farming. They won't really know what they want to do. I would rather give them, again, more information and have them be able to decide kind of what their interests might lie than place somebody in a position where they're not going to be interested, they're not going to be excited, they don't really want to come to work, and therefore they're not as good a worker. This is not all of our positions. Also, I'm just looking through this quickly. This was edited for Christmas. Another reason why I like Google Forms so much is that I will actually go in and remove positions that we are full up on. Petting zoo always goes very quickly, for example. I'm not going to go through these in depth, but I will have like a link to, I will again be able to give you guys a link to their application. And if you want to look into this further, you're more than welcome to email me and I can always get this to you. But yeah, as you can see, just quickly, it's pretty basic information that we give on these job descriptions because we don't have to go too much in depth. But again, we do like people to know kind of what they're getting into, that way, you know, when we get into our interview process, they're able to know what their interests lie. And then the next thing after our job descriptions is we actually will have them rank their choices of where they would prefer to work. Again, I want somebody in a position where they enjoy working, where they're excited, and where they have maybe some interest in. It's great. I love it. To have them put in a basic availability. It's great. I love it. Again, we can start thinking of who is able to be in what position. Do we have, we need a lot more people we have a harder time kind of recruiting for. That gives them a little tick in my mind that they might be a better fit than somebody who obviously can only work certain times. This is also, all these questions are also really good because it helps me also see if the employee is good at following directions. Because I have had employees who have filled in just a couple of these, like this, they'll say they can work 3 hours, like 2 days a week. Well, they've also already said that they are available 15 hours a week. It shows me if they are able to kind of think this through, if they can follow direction, read the position descriptions. It's not necessarily a deal breaker if somebody is not following directions super well, but it's good information for me to have when we go, if they do make it on to the next steps for training and how to kind of best effectively connect with them. We might have to do something a little different if they're just not getting how to follow directions that are written down. This availability also is not final. We have a whole other thing when it comes to our availability and scheduling and all that jazz. But this is, again, just a basic availability that lets me know what that all involves. Okay. Perfect. Another thing, and I don't have this on here as well, that I really like about Google Forms, before we move on to interviews, is I do very much enjoy that they have an ability to have a spreadsheet. So they will actually collate all of the answers into a spreadsheet for you. You do not have to come up with a spreadsheet. You don't have to sort people. I am really able to easily do my next steps, which is interviews, and get all that information together and see who's interested in what, because Google Forms does it for me. I love Google Forms. I think it's great. It's free. It's fantastic. And it also keeps my spreadsheets for me from previous years. So I can also check if somebody like reapplied or somebody applied and they didn't show up for an interview. I'm really able to go back quickly and see what happened there. All right, so next thing we're going to be going over is interviews. So after we receive an application, I took a look at that information, and if the applicant seems like they're a good fit, I will reach out via email with an interview time and date. We don't give them several options. I used to give them several options. I don't do that anymore. I just say your interview is at this time and this date. I just send out a simple form email. I just have it saved that I just fill in the blanks there. It's another really good touch point to see if they can follow directions. We primarily will do one-on-one interviews, and they have to confirm those interviews before they come out. We have every year, people will get an interview request. I'll give them a time and a date, and they won't confirm it, and they'll just show up. Again, not necessarily deal breakers, but it is really good information for you to have, especially because we are training people in a very short period of time. We're hiring in a very short period of time. And it is definitely a bonus. And it definitely is going to hurt you a little bit in getting the job if you are somebody who is not following our procedures, essentially. Like I said, we primarily do one-on-one interviews scheduled 15 minutes apart, with the exception of our Christmas tree workers, because we have so many of them we do have to hire. We will do group interviews for that position only. We have found that one-on-one interviews allows you as a hiring manager to get a better feel for the applicant and be able to tell very, very quickly if they're a good fit. I know when I started doing interviews and I started coming into the farm doing hiring, it can feel very daunting doing interview after interview after interview after interview. However, I personally, having done group and one-on-one interviews, in my opinion, are the way to go. I can tell within about 5-10 minutes in an interview whether somebody's probably going to be a good fit. And you just don't get that when you do the group interviews in the same way. About 24 hours before that interview, I send out another email just confirming their time with more information about where they're going to go when they arrive, where to park, how to dress. I also let them know that they don't need to bring anything. They don't need to bring a resume. I don't ask for references. I don't do any of that. I just ask them to arrive early. Because we do have them fill out this interview sheet we will be going over in a moment. When they arrive, we do have them fill out this interview sheet. I have to credit Hugh McPherson at Maze Quest for this idea. We've modified quite a bit of this now over the years, but we did take his one of his seminars a while back. I think probably when I first started getting into hiring, and we love the way he did our interviews, and we've now just modified the questions and kind of made it a little bit of our own. So yes, we give them this interview sheet, they sign in, and on this interview sheet, as you can see, it has how the hiring process works, things that you must do in the job, and basically what the next steps are and what they need to know. And then we have our questions. Our questions are there on the bottom. They're very open questions. These questions that you can see, they're not about job experience. They're not about their best qualities. They're not about any of those classic interview questions, but instead they're questions about themselves. Again, we hire a majority of minors, many of whom this is their first job interview, and they are really nervous, a lot of them. I cannot get a good feel for somebody and whether they're going to be a good fit if they're so nervous that they can't even really show me their personality. I can't even tell if they do have like a bigger personality, or maybe they're more introverted if they're so nervous. So these questions, again, we give it to them ahead of time. we allow them plenty of time to fill out these sheets. It's not like we don't say, oh, you have 5 minutes and then your interview time, if it's up, we're going to bring you in. We give them plenty of time to fill it out. I want good answers from them. I want them to be as not nervous as possible, as much as we can. The answer sheets also has our minimum expectations for the job, like I said, so things you must do: make people happy, smile, basic stuff. And general guides to our hiring process. This sheet is theirs. We don't actually collect this at all. So they are going to complete this, complete the form beforehand, and that way they're able to kind of think of these questions ahead of time. These are basically the only questions we are going to ask them in the interview. And again, these questions allow us to get to know them really well. It allows us to kind of know a little bit more about their personality and, again, how they would deal with hopefully situations that they might encounter while working. So quickly, tell us about a victory in your life. What time you messed up? What's the biggest decision you made over the last year? Why was it a big deal? And what is something that you could talk about for 20 minutes without preparing? Love these questions. We do not go over every single question on this sheet as well. That would be way too long. I typically pick about 2, sometimes 3 if somebody is kind of not coming out of their shell. However, you as the interviewer, 2 questions, you probably are going to know whether they're going to work or not. Things that we look for are, is the applicant smiling? Did they actually answer all the questions? Sometimes people just leave them blank, even though we've given them like 15 minutes to fill it out. Did they understand the question? That's a big one. Sometimes people just don't get the questions, and they continue to like try to fill in the blanks what they think. Did they at least try to attempt to figure out the question, or did they leave it blank? All good information. Are they willing to talk? Are they willing to open up? These are, again, fantastic things for me to know as to where I'm going to place them and whether they're going to fit or not. And this goes for both minors and non-minors. We don't do a different interview process for adults. I find this equally important for adults who are applying, because we're going to have adults and minors working together and training together. And if that adult is not able to buy in to our process and answer questions about themselves that may be a little bit more untraditional for a job interview, they're probably not going to buy into other parts of our culture. Adults go through the exact same process. After we discuss these questions, we will briefly discuss the application, just if there's anything that jumps out at us, like their availability looks a little wonky. And then I also like to give a little bit more insight about the positions that they said that they were most interested in. And that's very basic. It's just letting them know that if they'll be working in a team or not so much. And I also will, in the animal care positions, I also ask if they have any experience. Not a deal breaker. We're willing to teach people. We've had some fantastic horse people that have had limited experience with horses in the past. Again, I just want to know the information so we can kind of figure out where they fit. After that, I give them an exact date that they can hope to hear from us. We do email all of our applicants whether or not they are hired. This is something I feel very strongly about, having been somebody who applied for many jobs back in the day. I always hated going to job interviews and not knowing what happened. I like to email them back. I like to email them. That way, even if they're not hired, I still have a touch point. We can still maybe reach back to them, especially if the reason they were not hired was for like an availability reason, or we are just not able to hire in a certain position. I will also sometimes give feedback as to why they're not hired if I am emailing to let them know that they're not hired. I try to keep that feedback to only be if it's an availability or position. I don't offer feedback in terms of how they perform. Smile. If they ask, I am more than willing to give them feedback. Again, a lot of these kids, this is their first interview, so some of them are very excited to learn a little bit more. But I do give a little bit of feedback sometimes, especially if it's something like your availability just isn't going to work for us right now. New hires are also emailed as well, obviously. And then the next step in our hiring process is our group orientation. So they're given an orientation time and date in that email when I send it out. Again, we don't give multiple options. This is something we used to do. I don't do that anymore, just because, quite frankly, they're going to have to get used to reaching out to you if they have scheduling problems in the future. So if somebody does have a scheduling problem, I expect them to reach out and let me know. We do ask them to confirm, again, just multiple touch points to make sure that they are, again, able to follow directions and get back to us. We want to make sure that we have a good attendance rate for every single orientation, and we can plan for them effectively. We aim to have our orientations bi-weekly, like I said earlier. However, we also try not to have our orientations exceed about 25 to 30 new hires. In the job offer email we send, we do not give them their positions yet. That's another thing. We do not give them their positions yet. We really treat the group orientation as another kind of step in the interview process. Like they're not 100% in until you've gone through that group orientation and got your job position. We also encourage but do not require parents of minors to attend. We did used to require parents to attend, or parent or guardian, but we found it disproportionately was impacting new hires with working parents and those that are kind of lower on the socioeconomic ladder. And we were missing out on some really good employees because we were requiring this. We have found we have not had an issue with parents not attending. It's not really been something that's come up. We do, as we'll go through later, we do require parents to be involved. However, we don't require them to actually sit in on the orientation. Okay, so now we're going to move on to orientation. So before we do our orientation, we prepare a folder with everything that's listed on the screen. Our expectation guides, our benefits. We do a photo release and a liability waiver. That's basically our liability waiver is so that all employees can go on our zip line and our horses. Photo release is just so we can use it in our marketing materials. We also have a personal information sheet that we also give out that has all our information to get them into our payroll system and onboarded onto our scheduling system. And we're going to go quickly through our expectation guide, and also we go through a training of our payroll portal as well. So yes, now we're going to go through our expectation guides quickly. Our guide is specific to us, and we do edit it yearly with any changes that we may need to make. We have added in quite a few items that we have found are issues over the years that may not apply to other farms, other businesses. But the most important part of an expectation guide is just that you have one. We strongly believe that a thorough and strong expectation guides helps employees and us as employers get on the same page as to what is expected of your employee. We start with a basic overview of the farm. So again, I'm going to briefly go through this. If anybody would like me to send this out later, I am more than willing to do so. But yes, we go through and we go through a basic overview of the farm, and we like to remind all the employees that they are an important team member. That's really important. I think that sometimes people forget that they are the ones who are providing the experience. There's only so many managers that are on the farm. Most of people are going to be hourly employees. They are important. We also jump into our policies. These are, again, normal expectation guides things. We go over our dress code, and we do, again, try to spell everything out. Over-inform. I would rather over-inform than have somebody have a question and maybe or guess, essentially. We have found, especially when working with young people and those who might not have worked in a farm setting, that we really want to spell out everything, remind them to wear appropriate shoes, sunscreen. This, again, helps prevent any issues before they start. That is my goal here with the expectation guide. And we also read this in its entirety for our orientation, just for your knowledge as well. We like to, again, have our staff clearly identifiable, but we don't want them to have to go out and buy something new. So we just do, we have a farm shirt that we give them. And we want to make sure, obviously, that our farm is family friendly. So while we're pretty flexible on appearance, piercings, tattoos are fine, things like that. I don't really care if you want to dye your hair pink, as long as everything is family friendly. Good by me. Next, we jump into our professional behavior. In this section, we go over basic on-the-job requirements. These are things that might seem very obvious if you've been in the workforce for a long time, but again, A lot of these kids have not. This is their first time. And these are just good things to keep in mind for everybody, not just for minors as well. We, again, over-inform. That way, everybody hopefully will be on the same page. So again, this will be different for different farms. I do highly, highly recommend, if you do not already as a farm have an expectation guide with a harassment and discrimination policy, please do that right away. That's going to protect you as well as your employees. Having that spelled out is, I think, very, very, very crucial. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. We literally just say we don't allow discrimination based on gender, race, orientation, blah, blah, blah. And all harassment is sexual or otherwise is prohibited, and we expect them to report that to us, and we basically pledge to investigate that right away. It is super important that you have that in writing, and it's super important that you also, again, have a process for this and follow through. I also highly recommend having a policy in writing for substance use. You don't want to get into a situation where you're having to come up with something after the fact. You hope that you never have to use any of these, but having it in writing is very, very important. So as you can see, we have this right here. We don't allow tobacco. We don't allow vapes. We don't want to see it, especially, and I always say this, especially now that it's 21 and up. If you're a minor, we should not even suspect if you have a vape on you. Or any other tobacco products. Again, we also have our substance use policy right there. It's pretty basic stuff, but again, we just want to make sure that we are spelling it out so that way there is no question if something does happen. We want to be sure that if something happens, like an employee comes to work under the influence, you clearly define the consequences and they know that's not acceptable. We also touch upon guest interactions and remind employees to not touch guests and be alone with children. And then on a less serious note, we also go over electronics use, which is always a struggle, especially with younger people. We try to be pretty strict and also understanding when it comes to electronics. So if somebody's checking the time, setting an alarm for their break, that's one thing, but we do, again, like to spell it out that you are not allowed to be wearing headphones and using cell phones while you're on the job. We also try to remind them to not be talking super loudly or having personal conversation in the job. Again, these are basic things if you've been in a job before, but we like to assume that the people that are coming in have not. Our next section covers clock-in, scheduling, lunches, etc. I'm not going to go over every single section for time's sake, but just know that we do try to touch on everyday things that happen often on the job. Again, I feel like I've said this again, but want to be sure that we've talked through most situations before they happen, so they will hopefully remember to refer back to the guide. I don't expect everyone to remember everything. It's a lot of information we throw at them in this orientation. However, we want to make sure that we are trying to get as much as we can in them. So hopefully, should they have a question later on, they can remember to refer back to this. Let me go. Something I do want to bring your attention to as I kind of scroll down quickly through this is our lunches and our breaks. We do go over several times in our training process our minor labor laws. This is the biggest one for us that we have to hit, that we have to think about. And that is every 4 hours, minors have to take a full 30-minute break. This is something that a lot of times minors are not expecting. They're not used to it. Sometimes they don't even want to do it because 4 hours doesn't seem that long to them. However, we do like to multiple times kind of get it in their head that every 4 hours you have to take a 30-minute break. And we do hold minors responsible for letting us know about that as well. There's so many kids here that work for us. We don't know who's turned 16, who turned 18. We're not keeping track of that on a regular basis. So we do put the onus on them to remind us if they are not scheduled for a break or if they're coming up on that 4 hours. We also, again, go through, attendance, sick days, inclement weather, drug testing, pay, tips, all that fun stuff. If anybody would like to know how we do our tips, we pool our tips and we kind of do them by shares. I am more than welcome to go through that a little bit more in depth if somebody has questions at the end. And then The last thing that we do go over is our disciplinary policy. This is another thing that I strongly suggest all farms have in writing. This is, hopefully you never have to use it, or you have to use it very, very, very rarely, but it is really helpful to have it in writing. And I have had employees that I've referred back to this and been like, listen, this is our disciplinary policy. This is what we went over. This is the consequence of X. Let me take this. So as you can see, this is our disciplinary policy. It's pretty simple. It's a 3-step system. First one is going to be a verbal warning given by management and not supervisors for minor first infractions. And I like to give them a couple of examples. It's not comprehensive, but examples as to what can kind of earn you that verbal warning. And then we do a written warning. We send that in email as well as let them know as well. And it's going to go to the email. We always tell them what email it's going to go to. Have had a couple of people try to put their parents' email as their personal information sheet. And then if they get in trouble, try to change that email. We do it with the one that they provided to us that we created their accounts with. And most written warnings are going to be any kind of repeat issues. We do try to coach and kind of help folks figure out kind of some minor issues beforehand before it kind of escalates, but sometimes it just does. And then the last thing is going to be dismissal. So we don't really have, again, it's not really a lot of steps. We only have these 3 steps. We do make it very clear that our steps are not, none of this is exhaustive. We can engage. And additionally, some things are going to automatically jump up the ladder just because of how severe they are. So if somebody lets us know that they're not going to come in for just because they don't want to come in less than an hour before their shift starts, that's automatically going to be a written warning. If you arrive to work more than an hour late, that's going to also automatically be written warnings. And again, dismissal, we reserve the right, obviously, to fire somebody for more serious offenses on the first shot. Again, we're not going to have somebody come back that's been stealing or lying or came to work under the influence or just no call, no showed. Those are more serious things. And it might, again, seem very obvious to us as managers that, of course, if you no call, no show, you're not going to be able to come back. But writing it out lets everybody, again, be on the same page. I don't like to assume that people might know something. So outside of the expectation guide, I'm going to get back into the Prezi. Outside of the expectation guide, we also go over employee benefits. We have just a one-sheeter that we go through all of our employee benefits. We do offer free tickets per season. We will give 4 friends and family tickets for them to use. They can always come to the farm when we're open for free, our employees, I should say. We also have a concessions benefit, so they get 50% off all of concessions food for their consumption. And we also do a recruitment reward. So how that works is if when on their personal information sheet that we have them fill out in orientation, they can put who referred them. And if the person was hired and makes it through December, through the bulk of our busy season without any kind of issues, the person that referred them gets $25 per person if they're hired for the first part of the season, and it's $10 per person in the second part. And we do not cap that. If somebody gets 6 people in and they make it through December, great, you get like an extra, what would that be? Like $150. We have had people literally make $200 in their last check on these recruitment rewards. It's fantastic. We have had honestly full families that have ended up working for us. And we love it because obviously they enjoy it. They get to see each other more. Fantastic. It does, honestly, having recruitment rewards does help you have a stronger workforce, because it's people that are sharing you are going to share it with people that are going to share the positions with people that are probably going to work out better for you. We also let them know the date of our end of the year party at that time. We always have an end of the year party. People love it. We don't do a lot with it, but we open up the farm. We allow them to go on hayride and go on the bounce pillow. We get pizza. We just make it kind of fun. A lot of the times employees are not coming and able to do like a horse ride or a zip line ride when we're open during the season, just because they're either working or they're busy. So they love being able just to come out and kind of hang out with their fellow employees. We also have a chart with this is not on there, with our schedule deadlines that we go over at that time. That's probably a little too much to get into today, but again, I'm more than willing to share that. Our scheduling process, we have strict deadlines for when they need to get their days off requests and their availability in. And then we also will go over next steps and paperwork. We require all employees to complete an expectation guide acknowledgement form, basically just saying, hey, I understand we went through the expectation guide. I get it. If we break some of these policies, I totally understand the consequences. If they are minor, we also have the parent or guardian sign that that's on them. If they didn't come to the orientation, they had the option to come. They're saying they're acknowledging it. We're good on that. We also have all employees, I think I already said this, sign a photo release. So we use their image in marketing and social media. We're all covered there, and a liability waiver, because we do require liability waivers for horses and zip lines. And we don't want to get into figuring out who has one and who doesn't. And obviously if they work those positions, they will need to have a waiver as well. And that's per our insurance regulations and advice from like our lawyer to make sure we just have a liability waiver on everyone. Our personal information sheet is the only paperwork that we will collect before folks leave for leave orientation. I don't like to collect other paperwork during that time. This sheet is important though, because it allows us to input our new hires into our scheduling and payroll system. Again, if somebody would like that, I can also send that out to anyone who would like a copy. We use a PEO payroll company that allows employees to complete their I-9 and W-4 online. So it's not really something that we have to go over too much. It's pretty easy. But I do go through a quick little training about how to get into that payroll system. And then the last thing I tell employees is to keep an eye out for their training schedule on our scheduling website, and keep an eye out on their email. Within 24 hours, and it's not always easy, but I do try to make it happen within 24 hours. We will email new hires that made it to our orientation with their job offer and their pay. We pay employees under 21 a training wage that is allowed by under Florida minimum wage law. So when they are in their training sessions, we do pay for training. We do pay all employees for their training hours. They get a training wage, and then when they start their first full shift, when they're by themselves, they will get paid their normal wage. We also inform employees that they will not be allowed to attend training if they don't complete their paperwork online before their first training shift. I highly recommend doing that. I know it can be a lot keeping track of who has paperwork and who doesn't. Every time, though, that I have not been very strict and not allowed somebody to continue on with training when they haven't had all of their paperwork completed, I've regretted it. It's way too much to track down who has what and who doesn't. So I just make a blanket rule. I let them know ahead of time, and I also will remind them, hey, you are not going to be allowed to continue if you do not fill out all of your paperwork before you arrive to your training shift. And I will send people home. I have done it before, probably do it again. We will reschedule them into another training shift if we're able to, but it's just too much keeping track of who has what and who doesn't. The last thing we're going to go over is our training. So that's our last step of our onboarding process. All new hires on our farm will go through at least 2 training sessions and 1 on-the-job training shift. They, again, will receive an hourly rate for this training, just depending on what position they're in and whether they're under 21 or not. We will typically hold a couple of weekends when the farm is not open for our training classes. We try to kind of get it all done in a shorter period of time. All employees will attend a general training session that's about an hour long-ish, as well as position-specific training sessions that can be anywhere from an hour to 8 hours long. Our horse training is 8 hours long, and it's a multi-days. Most trainings are about an hour, 2 hours-ish. It's important to us that all employees have good understanding of not only their position, but about our safety policies, how to clock in, minor labor laws, etc. We will go through all minor labor laws. That way, again, we have so many minors, they can kind of know in their head what they are and are not allowed to do. Our policy for them is their responsibility, again, to keep track of which laws apply to them. And this is our general training. I'm not going to go through this obviously in its entirety. It'll probably be a bit much, but I do want to just show you what we have. We go over, again, uniform shirts, our policies, name tags, clock-ins, breaks. And then, of course, we have right there our minor labor laws. Again, minors are held responsible. And this is something we take very seriously, and we really impress upon them that if they break these, it's not like an oops. It is a serious thing, and they can get verbal warnings for not following these. So as you can see, these are things, these minor labor laws are things like no operating, cleaning, or repairing chainsaws, which are kind of obvious, to things that are less obvious, like no climbing ladders over 6 feet. That is something that before I started doing this, I would have never guessed is a minor labor law. We have specific minor ladders now that we literally will Sharpie on the side, minors can use. But it is really important that you have it in their head, as well as those minor labor laws and what they can apply to. Because, if you actually can get audited by the state for compliance with these laws. So again, we have to take it really seriously, and we do try to impress upon them that we take it seriously as well. We also go through paychecks, tips, two-way radios. Because we use radios everywhere on the farm, they are so important for us to be able to effectively run our day, essentially. We will go over how to use one. A lot of people have not used radios or walkie-talkies before. So again, we try to make sure that we go through that, as well as our emergency codes. We go over difficult guests. And we also go over active shooter training as well. This is not like super specific. This is just from the Department of Homeland Security. And honestly, as sad as it is, most of the kids have already gotten this, but it's good information to have. And because we do have quite a lot of people that will come to the farm at one time, it is something we hopefully will never need, but we like to put in people's head again. And then last things we go over is first aid and severe weather events. Again, this session will last around an hour. After this session, most employees, again, will attend one or more job-specific trainings. Our food service and horse positions do require multi-day training, but most others are taught within an hour or two. And the last step we do is on-the-job training. This is the most tempting step to skip, and maybe the most important. We don't want to throw people out into a position and say, figure it out, without giving them a lot of guidance first. All of our employees work a short shift. It's usually around 3 hours in their positions. We have them shadow an experienced employee for the first hour. The second hour, we have them work and have the employee kind of watch them. And then they kind of then they're able to kind of do their own thing for that last hour and kind of have us be a little bit more hands-off. We try to have all our new hires for our first season, pumpkin season, train on our slower opening weekend. The goal is to have the employees train when the farm is steadily busy, but there aren't too many guests. Because if we're super slow and we have them come in to do training, they're not going to be able to get any experience to do whatever they're doing. We also tell guests that it is a training weekend. This is something that we've not always done, but we have found that guests are much more forgiving when they're informed that many employees are training. We also use dynamic pricing, a dynamic pricing system for our tickets. And this weekend is typically on our lower price scale. So they're paying less when they come in. And if they're informed, hey, this is a training weekend, a lot of times they will be, again, understanding if we're a little slower, or if they're asking a lot of questions. All righty. So last thoughts, that's me. So those are my contact information. So that's basically our training and our hiring from first contact through onboarding. I realize this is a lot of investment in new hires. However, I strongly believe it's worth it. When you have a system of hiring and onboarding, it really does work. And when employees know where they're going to go, what to expect, how to meet their expectations, we have found that they feel supported, valued, and therefore they end up staying longer. Again, I wasn't even sure until when I did the math this year, what our retention rate is, but we do have a 75% retention rate as of last year. And I'm really, really proud of that. And I know all of our team has worked really hard to make sure that we are able to do that. And we have returners. We have people that literally come home from college and they'll work a couple weekends just because they want to come back to the farm. That's what we want to do here. Our businesses are made by our employees and they're made better by our employees. And so I hope that all this information will hopefully give you some ideas if you're newer to agritourism, maybe where to start. And if you're experienced, I hope that there were some parts that maybe you can help you get the best out of your staff. Like I said, it looks like we have some questions that we can I can hopefully answer. I'm here or whenever. So, and again, my contact info is right there if anyone has any other questions.
So I think your mom answered some of
Okay,
them.
perfect.
She answered photo day, and I wanted to know what program you use for scheduling.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So
Home-based, I guess.
sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry. She said it was home-based. You want to go into that just to?
Yeah, I'd love to
touch
do
on
that.
that?
That's actually something that I did not choose to put on here because I know it's different for everybody,
Mhm.
but we will also do a home-based training with our general training. That way there's no excuse that nobody does it, that people don't know how to do certain things. We do use home base. I have tried many scheduling systems over the years. We had tried 7 shifts, I believe. We tried when to work, when I work. We've used lots of different ones. I like home base the best. It does have its limitations. It is frustrating sometimes, but I love home base. It's fantastic. It allows a messaging in system. It allows asking for days off. It allows availability changes where they can put in what their usual weekly schedule is. So it's worked out really well for us. We've been with them now, I think 3 or 4 years. We've been with them for a while now. And they've gotten much bigger since we first started with them, but I love it. They also have a lot of tutorials. So they both have online tutorials like YouTube videos as well as written tutorials. So it's really easy for me if somebody asks, hey, how do I do X? How do I ask for a day off, but not the whole day? I don't have to go through and explain it. I can just link it and send it to them. Also, some other capabilities that I don't know if other systems have it, but I really like about it is it allows you, again, I know messaging is a common thing, but it allows you to see if they've seen the message. And the other thing I love is it allows you to see if they have opened their schedule. So I can actually look and see if they opened their schedule and saw it, which has been helpful sometimes, especially if we have an odd day where we're not usually open. I can look and see, oh gosh, it looks like half the staff hasn't even looked at their schedule yet. I better send something out to make sure that they know that they're working or not. I'm not sure if Jody answered. Oh, photo days.
Yeah. Lana remarked that there was a bill passed this year. So if the governor signs it, it just adjusts some of the ages.
Yes, it does adjust some of the ages, and I know it allows some of I know the curfew that was getting extended, which is fantastic. I'm not sure some of it.
For example, if you're 15 or under, you can work till 7 p.m. on a school night. This is one example. There's some limitations to that. And then for the breaks, I'm not sure it's changed, but if they work over 4 continuous hours, you have to have certain breaks.
Right, that's for 15 and under. Instead of 17 and under. So
but then for 16 and 17-year-olds, they can work till 11 p.m.
Yeah, so that's the way it is now. So I'd heard that they were extending it, which I mean doesn't really affect us too much. That's not really something we run into because we're not really open too much later. But I did hear that there was that was coming down the pipeline.
Right.
And Jody answered about photography days. Yeah, that's our one kind of transition event that we do where we will have photographers out, and it's a very low staff day, so it's kind of, we also kind of treat it as a good time to do our hiring as well and our interviews there at that time. Perfect. Anybody else have any other questions? I don't know. And again, if anybody has any questions about scheduling, I could probably do another whole hour about scheduling and our scheduling program and how we do our scheduling here. But if anybody has any questions, they're more than able to reach out. I'm happy to share anything that we have.
Well, thank you. That you hit it right on an hour. This was fabulous.
I'm very surprised. Usually I'm a talker, so I'm usually running over.
No, this
You are
has
so
been great.
knowledgeable, Jody. We really can't thank you enough. This was
thank you.
incredibly valuable, and you just really conveyed it in a very accessible manner. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Lots of great info in
Sarah,
your
do you
talk.
have
Yes,
any-
thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks,
And
everybody.
again, I will share this with everyone who registered.
Great.
And it's been great information.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you. We'll see you
All
in
right.
July.
Yeah. Excited.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Bye.
bye.